learn a biography of Dr. Carney, but before she does, I want to mention that Mag's sister is here. We're very honored to have Cora with us, and we just wanted to invite her. Please help me welcome Dr. Beth Bowen.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here with you, and I feel sure that Dr. Mag Carney is with us in spirit. I also want to recognize the presence of her nephew, who is the son of Cora Johnson, Eric. Welcome, Eric. We have double screens going as part of the twin revelation. And I'd like to thank our technical assistants for those minor miracles. This talk will also be recorded, so if you don't wish to have your recording go up on the internet somewhere, you could submit questions in writing, that would be fine. Or we could talk after the session. And I'll also invite Cora for 10 minutes after the session to have a chance to share. And others who might have known Mag, maybe I could ask for a show of hands. How many of you had the opportunity to meet Dr. Magdalene Carney? Look at that, this is old home group. That is great, at least half of the hands have gone up. So they'll be able to offer a second opinion for those of you who also knew her. How's that? This is a photo taken within a week or so of her passing, which was in 1991 when she was serving at the Bahai World Center in Haifa, Israel, as a counselor member of the International Teaching Center. And this is a picture of Cora. She's serving as a newborn nurse, and now she's using those skills for her granddaughter, Ivy Gabrielle, there we go, another angel. So she couldn't have a more experienced grandmother. I'll tell you, to select your grandmother to be a newborn intensive care nurse is about the top of the line. A tentative title for the biography of Dr. Magdalene Carney is Finding Freedom Through Teaching. Teaching was certainly one of her passions, whether it was teaching the Baha'i faith or teaching in elementary or secondary school. And she was born in Tennessee and served as a member of the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States from 1970 to 1983. During that time, she also served full-time as the Assistant Secretary of the National Spiritual Assembly from 1978 to 1983 to share a bit of humor, which I think Mag would endorse, and she was well known for her sense of humor. When she was originally elected to the National Spiritual Assembly, she received a telegram, this was before email, saying that she'd been elected to the National Spiritual Assembly, and was she coming to the next meeting? Well, she thought it was a practical joke. So she did not respond, and a few weeks later, the then Secretary of the National Spiritual Assembly telephoned and said, "Did you get the cable?" She said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, are you coming to the meeting?" She said, "Don't you think you're carrying this joke a little too far?" The International Teaching Center was another assignment. From 1983 until her passing in 1991, she was based in the Baha'i World Center in Haifa, Israel, as one of 9 members of the International Teaching Center. At the same time that she served on that council, Ruhiya Khanum was one of the members, and there were, I believe, 3 women and 6 men. So it was a very unusual position for any woman in the world, and certainly for the 3 who found themselves among that audience. To go back to the roots of how she happened to end up at the Baha'i World Center, here's a picture from Tennessee. The family home is, although she was born in Ringgold, the family home is about an hour by car west of Nashville, Tennessee. Is that correct? Roughly an hour, about an hour by car, okay? And the parents of Magdalene and Cora Carney are Herbert and Sally Lisenby Carney. The father of Mag's father was released from slavery at the age of 17. So So if you think of the trajectory going from having his first freedom as a citizen and also the opportunity to vote at age 17, and within one generation, Magdalene Carney being elected to the National Spiritual Assembly. This is by secret ballot of roughly 180,000 people, electing her not once but 13 times to serve as one of 9 members of the National Council governing the affairs of the United States, and then being appointed to the International Teaching Center, where she served full-time for 8 years. It's quite remarkable in 1 or 2 generations to see this huge progress of opportunity. Her mother had a 3rd grade education, and her father told me he had to leave school at 6th grade because he had to bring in the crops. He had to work for the subsistence to feed the family. This is a picture of Mag at infancy. She was the first of 8 children. There she is with her mother. It was 1929. Yes, Cora's nodding. I had thought that Cora and I had exchanged about 50 emails, but when I looked through them and prepared this talk, it was actually 250 emails. So that, we've been having an ongoing correspondence to be sure we keep close to the facts. This is the mother of Mag and Cora in her own kitchen, and here is a family portrait. Mag was the eldest of 8 children. Annie, who to the far left is still living and working on the homestead. To mention, the grandfather was able to get 20 acres, and his father, with the 8 children and your mother, built that into 90 acres, which is still family property now in Tennessee, from 20 to 90 acres in a generation or 2. Cora shared with me that this house was built by Mag and the brothers and sisters and the parents, and that the childhood house was more like this. It's a bit like the Abraham Lincoln story. And I do have a suitcase with 50 pounds of letters written by Mag, by her parents. For example, 300 pages were letters that Mag wrote to Cora during her 8 years in Haifa. About every weekend she would write a page or 2 to Cora, which is now a book in itself, 300 pages. And the sorts of things you find in there are, for instance, how many of you knew Mag was a golfer? Hands up, that was one of her hobbies, was playing golf. In Israel, she entered a public tournament and came in 2nd. And she wrote to Cora celebrating that, but saying, guess what was the prize? The prize was men's cologne. So Mag's writing to Cora, what in the world am I going to do with this? She was single, and she finally did gift it to someone else with his wife's permission. And there are a number of stories about golfing that give you insights. That she was once standing at the first, what they called a tee, the little thing where you put the golf ball on it. You could tell I'm not a golfer. And one of the members of the Universal House of Justice was standing there, and she turned to another member of the Universal House of Justice and she said, I think he's offering the long obligatory prayer before he's going to hit the ball. So one time when I was visiting Haifa, I sat down in the cafeteria next to that member, and I said, I heard this story, but I don't want to repeat it without confirming it. He said, it is true, but please do not reveal my identity. This is Mag with the Mitchell family. Mr. Glenford Mitchell is the one who asked me to write the biography. His wife, Bahia, and their daughter, Teresa, were close friends of Mag in Wilmette and in Haifa. Teresa now works for the Centers for Disease Control and is a pediatrician. Mag traveled a great deal, and I do have a list of about 25 of the countries. And this was mainly in the direct assignments by the Universal House of Justice to visit specific Baha'i communities. Part of preparing this biography, which has been a community process, so I set up a web page on Facebook, which you're all welcome to join. It's called Mag Carney Stories. It's free and open. There are almost 250 members now, about 200 of whom have sent photos or letters. And one of them said, well, I'm now a pioneer in the Gambia, and I heard that Mag visited the Gambia. Do you have any idea when? And I wrote on Facebook, I know it was between 1983 and 1991. And the next day, a Bahai from Colombia, Bogota, Colombia, wrote, Keith Bookwalter, he said, I have a letter here, which he did send me, I have it as an email attachment, that she wrote to me on May 1st, 1990, saying next month I'll be going to the Gambia, Ghana, and Nigeria for at least a week each. So there on the Facebook webpage, I said, why don't you start around the first week of June of 1990 and see what you could find in your local library. I wonder if perhaps our Nigerian friend might have been there in 1990 and been aware of her visit.
I can't quite remember 1990, but I thought she was in Nigeria around 1982 with Rohit Kano at the International Conference. I'm not very certain of that too. But when I get home, I'll let you know.
Thank you very much. We'll have some more research. This is spontaneous community research. And she also visited Kenya and represented the delegation. She led the delegation to the United Nations Conference in 1985 in Kenya, the UN Conference on Women. So this here is Mag Carney with Mr. Ali Nachiovani, who's now 95 years old, a retired member of the U.S. House of Justice. And here she is with Dr. Peter Kahn, the co-author of the book on the advancement of women, which was mentioned this morning, and a retired member who's now passed on of the U.S. House of Justice. This was the original International Teaching Center membership, with Mag standing in the center, behind Mr. Furitan. And this is a cable that I wanted to share, which you also have in front of you, written by the Universal House of Justice at the time of her passing in 1991. And perhaps you could read it to yourself as we go through it on the screen here, just briefly. It's published in the Baha'i World in the In Memoriam. The last phrase is, advise hold memorial services, her honor, all houses of worship and in Baha'i communities throughout the world. And that was accomplished, that request of the Universal House of Justice. Just a quick look at her childhood. As the eldest of 8 children, Mag was pressed into service at an early age to help raise her brothers and sisters and to assist her parents in every aspect of running their farm. And Mag was asked by Anna Marie Hanault to write a biography of why she became a Baha'i, and it's in a book called Why They Became Baha'is. It has 100 brief chapters by really autobiographical ones, and Anna Marie gave me permission to quote from that. This is in Mag's own words. My parents placed a weighty responsibility on me early on. They expected me to set the proper example for my brothers and sisters in all matters pertaining to moral and wholesome living. I privately vowed to educate myself so that I would be able to increase our resources and thereby give our family a little relief from dire poverty. And here is her graduation from high school. She was the valedictorian, and here's her graduation from college. She graduated magna cum laude from Tennessee State University. So that she knew how to work, and so see work as worship. She did excel in her studies, and when she majored, it was English and Spanish, and minor speech and drama, and I thought what a great benefit that was for the Baha'i community worldwide, that she had those skills and talents that she had refined. Just a quick glimpse, this will give you sort of an hors d'oeuvre for appetizer for the book. She taught elementary school and high school for 15 years, completed a Master's of Arts degree in Nashville, again, education and English. And then from 1969 to 91, she was very active in the civil rights movement. She served as chairman of a high school in Canton, Mississippi. And in 1969, she coordinated a successful desegregation program in the Canton Public School at the high school level. I first got to meet her, at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. She received a Ford Fellowship so that she could spend 5 years full-time working toward a doctorate in education. And I had the great good fortune of sharing an office with her during those 5 years, an office about half the size of this stage. And we actually graduated in 1977 with doctorates in education. Hers was on teacher training. And that year, this was in 1977, only 1 in 21,000 African-American women had the opportunity to earn a doctorate. The same day, Bill Cosby graduated. He was working on Sesame Street, many of you, which you may have heard from. And I turned to Mag, I said, 100 years from now, people are going to say, we know Mag Carney. Who is Bill Cosby? Here she is on graduation day. It was a great time of great rejoicing. Just to summarize, her professional aims was teacher training to prepare competent and compassionate teachers, and to be aware of the role of ideals in human development, the education of children, mentoring and nurturing of youth, emotional development, and the elimination of all forms of prejudice. She viewed prejudice as an emotional commitment to an untruth. And the challenge in re-educating people to understand that is not only in the head, it's also in the heart. And she focused equal attention, I would say, on the spiritual nurturing and recovery of people who had an emotional commitment to that falsehood. Just a brief bit about how she became a Baha'i. She met Dr. Sarah Martin Pereira. Hands up if you have met Dr. Sarah Pereira. Again, I see about a third or half of the hands. Well, that was while Dr. Pereira was a professor at Tennessee State University. And Dr. Pereira introduced her to the faith. That she had one of Dr. Pereira's teacher training students was an intern in Dr. Carney's office in her classroom. And Dr. Pereira came to see how the student was doing in the practicum. And Max showed an interest in Baha'i ideas. So Dr. Pereira gave her a pamphlet, Modern Religion for Modern Man. It summarized the purpose of religion, outlined the essential features of a new religious system being established in the world, and invited the reader to investigate the Baha'i faith. I think it was by Horace Holly. It's just a 4-page folding pamphlet. Well, Max said, by the time I finished reading, I believed in the new system, the Baha'i faith. Unimaginable joy flooded my heart. It was the object of my quest. One pamphlet, 4 pages. That was it, right? Cora's nodding. And throughout her 29 years of service to the faith, she traveled extensively, especially in the southern United States. In the interest of time, I'd like to invite Cora to come and share a little bit, if you feel comfortable doing that, or I could bring you the mic. You could wait till tomorrow if you prefer.
I wanted to do a little bit more.
Okay. Tomorrow then. Yes? All right, tomorrow. All right. Then that gives us a few more minutes, if that's all right. Yes? Okay. Thank you. As a member of the International Teaching Center, Dr. Carney's roles included to stimulate, direct, and coordinate the work of the 5 continental boards of counselors, and to promote the spiritual, intellectual, and social development of Baha'i communities throughout the world. Now, the questions that are coming up on the Facebook page, which is now about 200 pages long, are for many people who are not familiar with the Baha'i faith, and they're saying things like, well, I can understand her going to Nigeria and Kenya, but how was it that she was supervising the work of the Baha'is of Norway and Sweden? It's very interesting. Baha'is will understand these things, but for people who are not Baha'is, saying, first of all, what's the International Teaching Center? I was that she's living in Israel and coordinating the work of people in Sweden and Norway, who, by the way, when she was coming to speak, they said, please don't talk about God here. We don't talk about God in Scandinavia. Needless to say, she did talk about God when she visited. Now, she was called to, this is the members of the International Teaching Center with the 9 members of the Universal House of Justice. When she was appointed, she was called to travel and visit Baha'i communities worldwide. And here's just a brief list. You may recall one of the 3 objectives Abdu'l-Baha sets out in the Tablets of the Divine Plan are travel, travel, travel. And Mag Carney certainly did travel, travel, travel. These are just some of the places she's visited. I've written to the National Spiritual Assemblies of each of these places and received back photos and letters about her visits, and would be grateful if you're able to follow up in Nigeria for that. Now, her last formal appearance in the United States was as a presenter at the Louis Gregory Baha'i Institute at the Peace Award during 1991. Her body is buried in Haifa, and the entire staff at that time was approximately 600 individuals from more than 100 countries who attended her funeral on the day she died. So you might ask yourself, how is it that someone born in rural Tennessee in the utmost physical poverty should die on Mount Carmel in Haifa, Israel, and have 600 people from almost 200 countries attending her funeral the same day? There's got to be some mystery there to evoke interest in people saying, what was it that she saw and what was it in her vision that enabled her to have such a distinguished departure. And in the end of the handout that you've got, one of the aims of the biography is to may her highly active life, selfless service, and exceptional professional work in the discipline of education illuminate and illustrate the dynamic coherence of applying spiritual and practical principles to advance civilization. So one of the lenses I'm using in organizing this story of her life and work is the secret of divine civilization. How did she overcome material poverty? How did she obtain an education against great odds? And how did she overcome the challenges of racism and sexism and various forms of discrimination, of which she had as great a challenge as anyone in this country and perhaps in the world. So being able to do that in one lifetime is something that I think will behoove all of us to gain lessons from the integrity of that struggle. Thank you very much for this opportunity to share.